Hello, this is Robert Charles Anderson, also known as Maverick in my combat role, Bob to my family, Sujay to my spiritual friends. I've had many different lives, worn many costumes, played many roles. We're going to explore one of those roles this evening. As you can see from the cover that I'm wearing, I'm a United States Marine. I spent 2 years in Vietnam, uh, a fair amount of that time in combat as an aerial door gunner, and even part of the time in charge of all of the weapon ordnance at the little base on the demilitarized zone between South and North Vietnam called Khe Sanh. My occupational specialty was ordnance and weapons, aviation ordnance, and even ground ordnance, as well as small arms. Now, as I got out of the military, I certainly kept that fondness for military equipment. This evening, we're going to go through some of my collection that I have, that I'm also a very competent expert marksman. And we're going to go through my array of handguns and edge weapons. Now, every single weapon that you see here is registered with the government, and later on you'll see some that even have had to have a federal firearm stamp from the ATF. But this evening, it's more or less going to be standard pistols, swords, and combat knives. So let's begin. I'm going to switch the camera around, and we're going to take a look at the first pistol, which is a Smith & Wesson 38 357 Magnum. It is a titanium cylinder scandium frame. It's got a laser on the pistol. And this is, interestingly enough, this is one of the more expensive pistols within my collection. Because of the titanium cylinder, it only has 5 rounds, not 6, because of being able to fire a 357 Magnum. What you see here, these are called speedy loaders. On this type of a weapon, when you move the cylinder outward, you can eject all 5 spent cartridges at the same time and align the tips of the cartridges here into each of the cylinder holes, and then with just a little twist, you can drop all 5 into the cylinder at the same time. This makes for a very quick reload. So that's one. The next one is a 45 Long Colt. Now, a 45 Long Colt is same as like a 45 automatic, but it has a longer casing on it. It's quite a powerful round. This is a Ruger. This one, the cylinder does not come out. You reload it by ejecting the shells one at a time and reloading them one at a time. Obviously, takes more time, and this also has its own holster with bandolier of about 25 rounds. The next one is, again, a 7.5-inch barrel. This is a Ruger 44 Magnum of Dirty Harry fame. Now, this is a very large cartridge as well, and this is a steel-jacketed hollow point. It's quite a very devastating round. It also, like the previous weapon, this one has a flip open where you eject the rounds one at a time and then reload one at a time. As you can see, the swing out cylinder, which can be reloaded 5 at a time, is much quicker. Now, coming down, we have a couple of samurai swords. Now, this isn't your garden variety samurai sword that you buy for $100 or $200. This is hand forged and folded steel. I would say that at this point it's about a $5,000 piece of equipment. You'll notice the Hymon on there, which is the temper line. This is indicative of a good sword. That was made personally for me by a very excellent bladesmith. This one here, also a very sharp sword, but it's more commercial, more of a commercial samurai sword. It is not the hand-forged sword, but it's quite serviceable. It's good for practice. So those are the two swords. That's the saya or scabbard. This one is ray skin, and I actually tied that knot myself, which took me several hours to learn how to do that. Moving over, we have a Kahr PM40, which is a .40 caliber semi-automatic. Again, it does have its own laser on the pistol, and it fires a .40 caliber shell, and here's the magazines that go with it. It's basically a small concealed carry type weapon. It's very serviceable. It's got a polymer frame and a steel slide. The next one up the line is a 9mm, and this one is got a steel frame and a steel slide. It's much heavier, and as most of my pistols do, it also has a laser on it. Now the magazine that's in there now holds 7 rounds, whereas the smaller magazine holds 5. It's an extended magazine. Again, a small carry type weapon. Coming down, we see a Sig Sauer 380. 380 is a relatively small caliber semi-automatic pistol, but Sig Sauer makes one of the best small 380s, in my opinion, in the world. It's a metal frame, it's a metal slide, machined. It has a safety similar to a larger, like a 1911 45, but again, a very small, it's called a subcompact. Excellent little weapon for carry. And these are naturally spare magazines that go along with it. Coming up from that is a Springfield 45 caliber compact semi-automatic pistol, again with a laser on it. Now, 45 is a very heavy slug. When we say 45 caliber, it talks about the size of the bullet itself, and it's usually in grains, and then the diameter is 45 caliber, and I guess could be in millimeters. Again, it's a heavier type of carry weapon. It's got a polymer frame and a solid steel slide, but again, a very fine piece of equipment. Coming up from that, we have a Para-Ordnance 1911, and it is what's known as a double stack. Double stack means that it will hold 15 rounds in the magazine versus 8 rounds in a standard 1911. It's called a single stack. An excellent weapon. It's a standard 1911, type 45 caliber pistol. 45 has not got a very fast slug, but it's a very heavy round, and at close range, it's quite devastating. It's like throwing a brick through a plate glass window. And next to it, we have another 1911. This is a Springfield 1911, and it's got rosewood handles. Now, this is known as a single stack. As you see, the magazine isn't as wide, and it only holds 8 rounds. But a very fine weapon. It's a very heavy weapon. It's got a steel frame as well as a solid steel slide. Very accurate, well machined, well made. Coming over, we have a Bond Arms Derringer. This Derringer it can actually fire 2 different types of slugs. It comes up, as you see. Now, what's in there now is a 410 shotgun shell. However, it will also fire the 45 Long Colt that you saw in the revolver earlier. And this is a, again, very solid machined weapon. It's well made, rosewood handles, and it's got its own little holster for it. And it's a superbly made piece of equipment. And then coming down one, we have the Ruger Mark III. It's a .22 long rifle target pistol. And you'll notice the hand grip is set as left-handed because I'm left-handed. You see how his thumb goes in that well right there. And it's set up with a scope on it. So this is for very, very precision type target shooting. This is, something like you would use in match shooting. Now down below, over to the right here, we have an FNH 5.7. Now 5.7 is the caliber. It's like a 5.57 that you'd find in a rifle. Interestingly enough, this pistol, again, it's got a polymer frame and a steel slide, but it has a slug very similar to a rifle slug. The size of the bullet is like a .22 caliber. However, the casing that you see here, it's more like a rifle casing as opposed to what you normally expect from a pistol casing. In addition, each of these magazines will hold 20 rounds, whereas a normal semi-automatic that you saw over here will either hold 5, 7, 8, and in the case of the double stack 1911, 16. But each of these magazines of the FNH 5.7 will hold 20, and this extended magazine will hold 30 rounds. So that's a broad spectrum of handguns of pretty much most of the standard calibers that you'll see out in the world today. Each one has advantages and disadvantages, certainly according to personal preference. But being a collector as well as a marksman, I enjoy shooting different calibers, different weights, and so on, because it gives me an opportunity to hone my skills and not get stuck into one style. Down below here we have some combat knives. This is known as a 4th Recon knife. That's a pretty bad boy type of blade. And this is a standard Marine Corps. It was known as a K-bar or combat knife. Very sharp. This is one I acquired fairly recently. It's got a grooved handle, and it's a very nice style. Again, it's a combat type knife. Very rugged. And finally, we have a mini Bowie knife. Very sharp. That one's sharp as a razor. And it's an excellent knife for the outdoors and fishing, doing any type of minor wood type of things like carving up for kindling wood or something of that nature. So this is the small arms and sword and knife collection that I have, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. And by the way, one final thing, that holster is custom made. I think it was like $900. It's left-handed. It's hand-tooled leather. It's really quite beautifully done. It's a very, very fine piece of craftsmanship, as you can see from the tooling on the belt and also on the holster. It's really quite a beautiful piece of work, and of course it also holds about 25 rounds in the loops on the back. That's for the .44 Magnum. But at any rate, I suppose everybody has to have hobbies, and this is one of mine, certainly because of my background as a Marine, and I think I'm just predisposed genetically to be a warrior, even from my earliest days. But more often, it's for the engineering of it that I really enjoy. The weight, the balance, the machining. These are fine pieces of crafted equipment that, if you're if you're into shooting or armament, these are some of the finest made. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you on the next video where we'll go through the assault weapons and combat shotguns and so on. Thank you very much. Have a good one.